It's my absolute honour to present this week's talking blog to you on a Monday, and I hope to keep it as short to the 15 minutes that I've wanted to. Today I'm just talking about two random things that carry on from the noise and some ideas around building networks, and the other about the feel of the CBD. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to keep these talking blogs down to 15 minutes, and I looked at the very first talking blog that I did and horrified that it ran for 41 minutes. Yikes. None of us really has that much time to spare unless you wanted to use it as a means to fall asleep with, because my voice does drone on quite a lot. But listening to somebody talking about the matter of noise, because there is lots of noise in every apartment building, can be really boring and to some extent really heavy. But, you know, it's like I say, if noise is something you want to hear somebody talk about, then welcome. Tēnā koutou katoa, my name is Sienna Raymond, and welcome to the Talking Blog, where I just spend time weekly talking. Really, the Talking Blog is, as I kind of ventured to give the description on YouTube, is a thing that is set up to help guide the cosmic wahine to living in, a big city. Like at the moment, I like talking about living in Tāmaki Makaurau CBD. So this last blog, which was all about the matter of noise, and is this part two to that? It's kind of getting updates about, when complaints of noise are made, you want to get to the kind of nitty-gritty of what's happening. And that what is really interesting about talking to different people, owners, tenants, property managers, landlords, or building managers, there's lots of lines of dialogue. I don't know if you notice it, but lots of lines of dialogue that swirl around and around and around, that get said to one person in one way and then to another person in another way. And it gets so murky that you're not quite sure, is this person telling me this because they know that I want to hear this, or are they telling me because it's true, or this is the sort of script that they've been given that they must use every time the subject comes up. What I think from experience, anyone who's living in an apartment building, whether you're a tenant renting or you are an owner, one really good thing is to make sure that you've got that strong network. And I think that's particularly important for people renting, and I don't know how other people feel about that if they're in the UK, Aussie, the States, anywhere else, what it's like to really live fully in an apartment, whether you're single, particularly I think if you're single, and English is a second language, or the country that you're living in that has a different language is your second language. Being able to have a network or a group that you can belong to within the building, that you've been able to grow and develop. For one thing, it's not always easy to do that. It can be very intimidating, and I say that it does come with communication skills, and plus know-how, having the wisdom to know who to connect to and who not to. But in no way am I saying that you should start becoming very personal with them. It's the same as if you connect onto a social media group. Facebook has got lots of groups of people who, women's groups, men's groups, living in the city groups, living in the country groups. Those are the kind of networks that you want, where they're very formally informal, but enough that if trouble arises or there are complaints being made about noise, or that you need to ferret out from other tenants and neighbours around you, are you hearing this? I'm getting this. these are the complaints that are coming forward. And that sort of carries on from what, circling back, I suppose, to what I was talking about in my previous talking blog, is that how do we know when there are noise complaints being made, as so many people have talked to me about? How do we kind of pull on what's a real complaint and what is something that is just somebody being vengeful or being resentful? And that's what happened in the case of what I talked about in my last blog, that there was a lot of resentment from a tenant. And so the update on it, when I did inquire further about his antics of planting a radio in his bathroom, which went into both the sewer pipe and his extractor fan, which affected more the tenant that lives opposite to me, and the other people around us were, the owners, basically, we're people that kind of know the spaces, know this environment really well. But for her, it was a lot more intrusive and very much in her face. And to find out, well, what happened to this tenant, and the most they got was a warning. The least that they could get is, probably a little tisking, but they did get a warning. Now, the interesting thing is that there's been a lot of talk out in the media about this 90-day rule that, landlords can use to evict people, which is, you think, okay, that sounds difficult. But it is actually difficult to manage because you have to be able to give three warnings to the tenant before you can actually issue an eviction notice. So I've been learning these new things in the last wee while, all coming out from this situation of the noise. What it turned out to be was someone who had who has been experiencing this for a very, very long time, and other people have decided to, pack up and leave. So when, in the case of our building, which is currently undertaking remedial work on the top floors, there are lots of different noises that are showing up. Being able to get a handle on them, that's what the building managers and their teams are meant to do. They're meant to provide some form of that first comfort gap, I suppose, and then from there you would go, you go to the landlords. Living in this big city, it's very international today. It is, or has been really growing in an international population for some time. When you do walk around the CBD, there is a distinct flavour and a distinct tone that is international, and you'll be able to get a gathering of that around food and the amount of small restaurants and cafes that are catering for an international population. So it does take quite a lot of adjustment to living here than it would if I lived over in some other suburb in Auckland. Again, it's even different more than living anywhere else. Living in Aussie is just as bustling, and there are a lot more metropolitan feels about those cities. And the CBD is still heavily reliant on the New Zealand, the Kiwi population to come into the CBD to be able to spend and keep the shops open and the economy flowing in the CBD, because there are so many shops that are closing. And here in the CBD and in Newmarket, it's really, really noticeable. So there just isn't that foot traffic coming into the city to buy from the shops. But there's nothing in the CBD other than farmers, really, that would draw a lot of the fair dinkum Kiwis into the CBD. There isn't enough of that interest to gather that. And this is just from experience, researching, looking around, watching the different demographics of people coming into the city, being in the city, walking up and down the main drag or around the adjacent streets. And it's very clear that it is catering for an international population, because you've got a lot of restaurants and cafes, as I've said, and a lot of clothes shops that are for the younger international population, such as your international students. And it's brilliant. It brings a different type of flair and a different sense of feeling. But at the same time, it's not a very relaxing place. The atmosphere at different times is very tense, but there are times when it is very, very quiet. And because of so many burglaries taking place all over the wider, Auckland, Tāmaki, Auckland area, I find that I'm much more aware, more inclined to be engaged in my environment, especially when I'm walking from one space to another. I don't pretend to be as caught up in my music or listening to my podcast or listening to an audiobook as I used to be. So I'm looking at how I'm feeling in a city that I grew up in, that I've been very familiar with my whole life. And even though I've gone out of the city and I've been away from it and travelled overseas and gotten to know what different cities are like in other countries, I'm a lot more tense being back here in a central business district than I have ever been. And it's funny, because when we were kids, young teenagers, adolescents, we used to come into town to go to the flicks because it was the only place that had the movie theatres. You had the Regent, St. James, Odeon, there were a couple of others, the Civic, of course, and we loved it. It was thriving. It was so busy. You'd have to be sharp to feed your way in and out of the crowds of people, but it's not like that so much, except 5 o'clock people are pouring out of building. You don't even know where all these people have come from as they flood the main drag for no more than half an hour, and then it's all gone. But back in the day, peak hour traffic was pretty full on, and it's not like that anymore. So I gauge living here really by the way that I feel when I live here. And do I feel contented about living in a city that I've grown up in and, have always believed that I was welcome and comfortable? Not all the time. Not all the time. There are a lot of things about this city that are changing. Some of it not for the best, and some of it because necessity has made it that way. Wow, I've managed to keep this talking blog down to the 15 minutes that I wanted to. I hope that you will come back and listen for more talking blogs. Come on over to my website, Sienna Raymond Creative. Let me know what you think about this episode. Do you have anything to add? I'm going to pop it up on YouTube shortly. As they all say, stay tuned for more updates. Till then, take care. Ka kite anō. This is Sienna Raymond signing off from the Talking Blog.